The Crusades and their role in shaping modern Christian-Muslim relations. The Crusades, 1096 to 1291, were a series of religious wars that left an enduring legacy on Christian-Muslim relations. These campaigns, which brought the Islamic and Christian worlds into prolonged conflict, were not only a defining feature of the medieval period, but also influenced how these two faiths perceive each other to this day. While the Crusades are often remembered for their violence and religious zeal, they also created opportunities for cultural exchange and diplomacy. However, their lasting impact has been characterized by a complex mix of hostility, mistrust, and dialogue. 1. The historical context, origins of conflict. Religious motivations. Christian perspective. The Crusades were launched as a response to the Muslim conquest of Christian holy sites, particularly Jerusalem, and were framed as a divine mission to reclaim these sacred lands. Muslim perspective. The Crusades were perceived as foreign invasions by Christian armies, threatening the sovereignty of Islamic territories and holy sites such as Jerusalem and Mecca. Geopolitical context. Christian Europe. Fragmented kingdoms and the papacy sought to unite Christendom under a common cause, using the Crusades as both a religious and political tool. Islamic world. The Islamic world was initially divided among rival dynasties like the Seljuks and Fatimids, but the Crusades spurred efforts to unify Muslim factions under leaders such as Saladin. 2. Short-term impacts on Christian-Muslim relations. Violence and hostility. Massacres and atrocities. The Crusades were marked by brutal violence on both sides, including massacres of civilians during the capture of Jerusalem in 1099 and other cities like Antioch. Destruction of religious sites. Both Christian and Muslim forces targeted each other's sacred sites, deepening the sense of religious enmity. Political and military rivalries. Prolonged conflict. The establishment of Crusader states in the Levant created ongoing friction as Muslim leaders sought to reclaim lost territories. Symbolic victories. The loss and recapture of Jerusalem became central to both Christian and Muslim narratives, fostering a cycle of retaliation and counter-retaliation. Emergence of stereotypes. Demonization of the other. The Crusades reinforced negative stereotypes of both Christians and Muslims, portraying the other side as barbaric and morally inferior. Religious propaganda. Both sides used religious rhetoric to justify their actions and vilify their opponents, laying the foundation for long-lasting prejudices. 3. Cultural exchange and diplomacy. Despite the conflict, the Crusades also facilitated cultural interaction between Christians and Muslims, influencing fields such as science, medicine, and governance. Knowledge exchange. Islamic contributions to Europe. The Crusades exposed Europeans to Islamic advancements in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. These ideas later influenced the European Renaissance. Mutual learning. Muslim scholars adopted certain European practices in fortification design and military strategy, showing that the exchange was not one-sided. Diplomacy between leaders. Notable examples of cooperation. The interactions between Saladin and Richard the Lionheart during the Third Crusade are often highlighted as examples of chivalry and mutual respect. Treaties and alliances. Temporary truces and alliances, such as the Treaty of Ramla in 1192, showed that diplomacy was possible even amidst conflict. Economic interactions. Trade networks. The Crusades stimulated trade between Christian Europe and the Islamic world, leading to a flow of goods such as spices, textiles, and glassware, which fostered indirect cultural understanding. 4. Long-term legacy of the Crusades on Christian-Muslim relations. Deepening of religious divisions. Entrenchment of hostilities. The Crusades cemented the perception of a religious divide between Christianity and Islam, framing interactions as a clash of civilizations. Christian perceptions. Muslims were often viewed as infidels and aggressors, an image reinforced by religious propaganda and chroniclers of the time. Muslim perceptions. Christians were seen as invaders and violators of sacred lands, a narrative that continues to influence how the Crusades are remembered in the Islamic world. Revival of historical memory. Colonial era. During the 19th and 20th centuries, European colonial expansion into the Islamic world was often compared to the Crusades, fueling resentment and resistance among Muslim populations. Modern political rhetoric. The Crusades are sometimes invoked in contemporary political discourse, particularly in framing conflicts between the Western and Islamic worlds. 5. The Crusades and the modern era. The use of historical narratives. Islamic world. The memory of the Crusades is often used to emphasize the resilience and unity of the Islamic world in the face of foreign aggression. Christian world. In the West, the Crusades are sometimes romanticized as noble endeavors, though modern scholarship has increasingly acknowledged their brutality and complexity. Impact on contemporary conflicts. Neo-Crusader rhetoric. Some Islamist groups frame Western military interventions in the Middle East as a continuation of the Crusades, reinforcing the narrative of Christian-Muslim enmity. Dialogue and reconciliation. Conversely, the memory of the Crusades has also been used as a starting point for interfaith dialogue, emphasizing the need to learn from past mistakes. 6. Efforts to bridge the divide. In recent decades, scholars and religious leaders have sought to reinterpret the legacy of the Crusades, focusing on opportunities for understanding and cooperation. Interfaith dialogue. Shared histories. By acknowledging the shared cultural and intellectual heritage of the Crusades, Christian and Muslim scholars have highlighted the potential for mutual respect. Apologies and reconciliation. Some Christian leaders, including Pope John Paul II, have expressed regret for the violence of the Crusades, fostering goodwill between the two faiths. Educational efforts. Teaching the complexity of the Crusades. Modern historians emphasize the multifaceted nature of the Crusades, challenging simplistic narratives of good versus evil. Focus on commonalities. Educational initiatives stress the cultural exchanges and shared humanity of those involved in the Crusades. 7. The dual legacy of the Crusades. A legacy of conflict. The Crusades undeniably left a legacy of mistrust and hostility that has influenced Christian-Muslim relations for centuries. Reinforcement of stereotypes. The negative perceptions formed during the Crusades have persisted, shaping interactions during later periods of colonization and conflict. Polarization. The memory of the Crusades continues to be invoked in political and religious rhetoric, often exacerbating tensions. A legacy of exchange. Despite the conflict, the Crusades also facilitated profound cultural and intellectual exchanges, bridging civilizations. The Crusades served as a bridge between the Islamic and Christian worlds, transmitting knowledge and ideas that enriched both civilizations. Opportunities for dialogue. The Crusades provide a historical framework for understanding the complexities of interfaith relations and the potential for reconciliation. 8. The Crusades as a framework for understanding modern interactions. The Crusades offer a historical lens through which contemporary Christian-Muslim relations can be examined, particularly in terms of conflict, cooperation, and shared histories. Religious narratives and their modern echoes. Islamic world. Resonance in modern identity. The memory of the Crusades is often invoked as a symbol of Islamic unity and resistance to external aggression. Leaders and movements have used the Crusades as a rallying cry to oppose perceived Western interference in the Middle East. Framing of Western policies. Western military interventions in the Islamic world, such as during the Iraq War, have been framed by some groups as new crusades, perpetuating the narrative of historical conflict. Christian world. Changing interpretations. In the Christian world, the Crusades have increasingly been seen through a critical lens, with a focus on the violence and destruction they caused. This reevaluation is part of broader efforts to reconcile with historical wrongs. Religious and political justifications. However, there remain elements within Christian discourse that celebrate the Crusades as a period of heroism and religious devotion, particularly in nationalist or conservative rhetoric. 9. The role of memory in shaping perceptions. The way the Crusades are remembered plays a critical role in how they influence modern Christian-Muslim relations. Symbolism of the Crusades. Jerusalem as a symbol. The struggle for Jerusalem remains central to both Christian and Muslim historical memory, symbolizing broader religious and political aspirations. Saladin and Richard the Lionheart. These figures have become enduring symbols of chivalry, diplomacy, and leadership, often used to represent the potential for mutual respect amid conflict. Historical memory and misuse. Selective narratives. Both Christian and Muslim communities have, at times, selectively interpreted the Crusades to serve contemporary political or ideological agendas. Polarization versus reconciliation. The emphasis on the violent aspects of the Crusades can perpetuate division, while a focus on the cultural exchanges and mutual respect offers opportunities for reconciliation. 10. Lessons from the Crusades for modern Christian-Muslim dialogue. The Crusades hold valuable lessons for contemporary interfaith dialogue and conflict resolution. Avoiding the cycle of conflict. Understanding root causes. The Crusades were driven by a mix of religious fervor, political ambition, and economic motives. Understanding these factors can help identify similar dynamics in modern conflicts and address them more effectively. Moving beyond clash of civilizations. The Crusades have often been framed as the beginning of a clash of civilizations. Challenging this binary narrative can foster a more nuanced understanding of Christian-Muslim relations. Fostering dialogue and cooperation. Shared heritage. Emphasizing the cultural exchanges and intellectual contributions of the Crusades can highlight the interconnectedness of Christian and Muslim civilizations. Historical reconciliation. Acknowledging the suffering caused by the Crusades on both sides can pave the way for healing and greater cooperation. 11. The path forward, bridging divides. Role of religious leaders. Promoting peace. Religious leaders have a crucial role in reframing the narrative of the Crusades, emphasizing common values and shared goals. Public apologies and forgiveness. Initiatives like Pope John Paul II's apology for the violence of the Crusades represent meaningful steps toward reconciliation. Role of scholars and educators. Encouraging nuanced understanding. Historians and educators can challenge oversimplified narratives of the Crusades, fostering a more balanced understanding of their complexity. Highlighting interdependence. Teaching the shared histories of Christianity and Islam during the Crusades can underscore their mutual contributions to human progress. Role of civil society. Cultural exchange programs. Initiatives that bring Christians and Muslims together to explore their shared histories can foster mutual respect and understanding. Commemorative events. Joint commemorations of the Crusades, emphasizing both the conflict and cooperation, can serve as a platform for dialogue. 12. A legacy of complexity. The Crusades remain a powerful symbol of both the potential for human division and the possibility of dialogue and cooperation. While their violent history has left scars on Christian-Muslim relations, their legacy also includes moments of respect, exchange, and mutual influence. The dual nature of the Crusades. Conflict. The Crusades remind us of the destructive potential of religious and ideological zeal when combined with political ambition. Exchange. At the same time, the cultural and intellectual exchanges fostered during the Crusades reveal the interconnectedness of human civilizations.